2 of March is in the books. Hard to believe. We are already halfway done, and here we are again. Big news of the week, obviously, market-wise, lots of widespread optimism, and we'll discuss a lot of the reasons for that, how long we think it will last, and on and on and on. We'll get into that in a minute. But first, of course, let's check the leaderboard. Yours truly has retaken his rightful place at the top at 11.6%. Austin in second at 4.42%. Kyle Tanimura has emerged from the basement and is now posting net positive. All right. Well done, well done. And Kyle, not far behind, but in the red. In the red for the month of March. So, I think the big story for everybody after last week was obviously the stimulus deal, and a lot of the COVID-related news has started to turn in the positive direction, and I think we really saw that in the pricing, in the market movement for the week. I guess let's catch up with what are you seeing in your portfolio that's moving, and what's your take on whether or not the stimulus bill is going to continue to fight off the downward pressure of Treasury bonds. Austin, what do you think?
Well, I think there's going to be the government's going to have to do something to fight the inevitable inflation. I don't know what I still don't know what are all the ammunition the government would have or the Federal Reserve would have to do this. The only thing I could think of is to raise interest rates, which has a negative impact on the market. And I think that with the stimulus deal, it's just excitement. And I think there's going to be maybe for the next month or so, I think that there'll be an uptick in overall performance of stocks because I think, especially with millennials, they're going to put money into whether it's into stocks or even into cryptocurrency. But that's what I think.
I was reading too the other day that with all of the ruckus that everybody was raising about potentially the Fed raising interest rates, they went from 1.2 to 1.6%. So we're talking 0.4 of a percentage point, and yet still last week you would have thought the sky was falling.
Well, I mean, that is a third. Yeah, it's a third, 33%. Yeah, or 0.4 is a third of 1.2, which was the original.
I know, it just doesn't feel like it's that much because we're talking about less than 2%.
Yes, depends on how big of a number you're multiplying that 1.6% against versus the 1.2.
That's true. That's true.
When you talk about trillions and trillions of dollars, those decimal percentages matter to someone.
That they do. That they do. Apparently not me, but other people, yes. But going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Kyle, into third. How does it feel?
Well, that's nice. So I guess the biggest mover in my portfolio is Boeing has been really pulling its weight since I bought it at the start of the month. So that's been really nice. I don't know if that's specifically stimulus check related. I think we talked about last week. I think it's benefiting heavily from expected laxing of tariff policy in the future, which is helping, I think, most airplane manufacturers. I don't know if specifically Boeing is the only one doing well under this. Maybe I don't know, Airbus is a competitor, right? I don't know how they're doing, but I would assume they're also benefiting from this. So I don't know if it's stimulus related, but it is policy related. I believe Shopify has been recouping some of the heavy damage at the start of the month, which I do believe is probably stimulus check related. Shopify
Probably.
Retail.
Yep.
People are going to get money, and the people who can use it as disposable income probably will support
Yep.
and want to go out and spend things on things. So that's nice. Still can't help but regret. Probably should have sold it at the start of the month because last month it was so high, and now it is very not high when compared to that point. But it's a net positive overall from when we first started this endeavor. So
I mean, that's what matters.
I can hold on to that at least.
Yep.
As for the rest of my portfolio, I don't know if it's really benefiting more hugely from policy changes. eBay is kind of in the same boat as Shopify, but it has been much less extreme, both positively and negatively over the last month
Yeah.
to a lesser extent. Every Tesla is doing what it wants, so yeah, there's that. I don't think that is really, that's affected by Twitter more than it is by government policy. So there's that.
Accurate.
Microsoft, I guess that is tech and on. I mean, it's consumer focused, so that could be benefiting a little bit, but it for the most part has remained very stable. I feel like throughout again the last 6 weeks or so. So I feel like it hasn't. You could say that maybe it would benefit, but I would say that the benefit is probably very small because it also didn't really seem to suffer as badly from any of the regression that we were seeing especially last week, I guess.
I think the thing to keep in mind there, and at least what I'm going to be keeping my eye on, is that as people start to make more permanent arrangements with what the future of the workplace looks like, if more companies embrace more remote options, I would look at those cloud sales very, very carefully. Because, I mean, it's them and it's AWS, and yes, there are other competitors, but those are the two most well established in the market. You would expect them to do quite well.
This is true. You're not wrong. And then this is not in my portfolio, but unrelated news, GameStop continue to do very well.
I saw it was rallying again, and I just
cut my losses too early. I could have. I think I could have been almost even on my GameStop investment at this point. Not quite. I think I bought over 300 because I bought like market open the Monday, like at the worst Monday possible. Besides that, unlucky, but kind of funny to see. I'm wondering if this is just gonna keep happening, because it's gonna rock it up a little bit and then tank. And it'll sit for a while until people realize something about it again and drive the price back up, and it'll just continue this cycle of kind of. But I don't know. We'll see what happens with it. Wall Street Bets is happy, so.
yeah, I mean, this is kind of uncharted territory for this sort of thing. We don't know how long term the community that's driven the price to where it is going to respond. So I would expect continued cycles of extreme volatility, but who knows? They are also still an operating business, which continues to surprise me. So maybe eventually they will make actual operational improvements and start to make money. Who knows? Alrighty, last but not least, Kyle, you're in the red. Not by much, though, to be fair. Not by much. It's an improvement over last week.
Yeah, it's getting better.
So yeah, catch us up. What's working and what's not working?
Honestly, so Delta's kind of been pulling its way back up again. It was heavily in the negative last week, and then it made a fairly substantial jump. I don't know. I guess a lot of my companies are still in the negative, but Pinterest has been trending on its way up as well. Etsy as well. So I mean, I'm hesitant to say that's related to stimulus or potential
Mm-hmm.
well, I guess related to that, but um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it could be people are like, oh, it's not exact the sky's not falling that hard, so maybe we should come back in. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess I don't know the state fully of everything, but it seems like everything's kind of generally on its trending up. And then so F1 testing just happened.
Oh dear. Do I want to know how this story ends?
I don't think Cognizant was. I don't think my intuition on that really did anything. It was already last week before the testing. It was already trending up anyways.
So you were right for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It's one of the actually, I don't know what my all-time performance is with Cognizant, but I'm pretty sure it's still in the red. But it's trending up right now.
You meant to do that, right? It was more of a long-term value play from the beginning.
Oh, definitely, yeah. It was definitely the forethought.
Oh boy. Happens to the best of them. Don't worry, you're not alone.
But I don't know. So
Yeah.
the big carrier for me right now.
Well, and I was looking at some news this week with the way that reopenings are projecting. I think that Delta's in a spot where it's probably going to do fairly well for quite a while if travel resumes at the rate that they think it's going to. Similarly, I'm looking at Alaska in my own portfolio and expecting that to continue to go up. I mean, it's up 38% since I bought it in February. It's only up 4% for the month, but if we really do start to make some serious progress in the next month or two, I think you and I will see quite a bit of movement on the airline front.
Yeah, because I'm up 24% on it right now. I think previously I was up like a substantial
Okay. Yeah.
like more. Um, yeah, so yeah, Pinterest previously was like in the I think I was like close to 20% gains as well. But yeah, I guess everyone's kind of panicking and dropping off that a little bit.
Well, I think this is an interesting one because on the one hand, as businesses start to open up more, businesses start to spend more on advertising dollars. So, on the one hand, you could potentially see some upside. On the downside of that, everybody's been stuck crafting in their house for the last year. I don't know how much that's going to continue if you suddenly can walk out the front door and do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, that's true. Like, oh, I don't have to like knit this blanket or
Mm-hmm.
all these other hobbies.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true. And then also with the weather getting like, well, at least in our area, the weather's getting a lot nicer now.
Yep.
So maybe that's influencing people are not quite, or maybe they're trying to be socially distant but outdoors still.
Outdoors, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this all leads me to my first question of the night for the group. With the COVID news and the stimulus news trending in the right direction, is there anything that you see right now that is such an interesting buy prospect? Whether you end up doing it or not is not the question. But is there anything that you have your eye on as this could be a serious winner if I were to do it? Austin?
I don't quite understand your question.
So, we're constantly trying to get a competitive edge over one another. With the economy reopening, is there any stock right now that you think is poised to make a big jump as more things return to quote unquote normal?
Okay. I think retail will have a big one. Like the big retail players, maybe like a Nordstrom or other just discretionary brands that weren't, or discretionary type companies that discretionary purchase type companies that weren't previously open, and then but basically were able to sustain themselves with online purchases. But I mean, people miss going to the store, so
Yep.
and shopping, touching, and so yeah, I think that's my opinion. And then
If you could only buy one thing, would it be a retail stock at this point? If you're trying to capitalize on the bounce?
no, I would do travel related, like Expedia or something like that.
Okay.
It's a little late now, but at the start of the month, I was looking at Airbnb, and it's gotten quite a bit up since the start of the month. I think it is greatly benefiting from the idea of everyone being eligible to be vaccinated by May.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see whether or not that happens.
Well, I don't know. I don't think everyone will be vaccinated, but
Well,
everyone
no.
probably will be eligible. I mean, like, you can go get it if you want to. We'll see how many people decide to go get it.
Yeah.
It'll be an uphill battle for somebody.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think that's the thing. Just because you're eligible for it, how soon can you actually get it?
Yeah.
Like, all of us are a great example of that. We work remotely at least part of the time. We're all young. Like, there's not a preponderance of pre-existing conditions. Even if you're eligible, other people are going to get it before you because they need it first. So.
Even like my parents, my grandma, like met the criteria. Like she's in her 90s, right?
Yep.
And it's very high risk that for the person. But even she had to wait like
Okay, so Austin and Kyle are both on the travel bandwagon. Kyle, if you could buy one thing to try to capitalize on the bounce of the reopening of the economy, what would it be?
So like when quarantine first was like came into effect last year, right? Summer was rolling in, and then like the weather was good, but people were like, I need home projects again. So I was really thinking, and this is kind of more of a personal thing because this is also like another interest of mine. It's like home improvement stores like Lowe's, Home Depot. Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Lowe's, whatever you have. I think those are gonna be, at least in my opinion, so like because they were booming last year when COVID or when quarantine first came in. So like
Yep.
yeah, and it's chilled out for a bit, but I think it's probably gonna be it's coming back again. Especially if people are stuck at home, like maybe they didn't finish their home improvement projects last year, or maybe they have, you know. um,
I laugh because that's relatable.
I know, yeah, it is
The
there.
eternal project.
I have a couple that should have been done quite a while ago and are still
Yes.
95% there.
You'll
Yeah,
do one step a year. One step a year is what I do.
I've lived
I
at this house for 2 years, and I said the first year I'm gonna build a fence and a shed, and then 2 years later I still have not built the fence or the shed.
So you're going to be the one driving up the value of the Home Depot and the Lowe's stock because you have to build your fence and a shed.
Exactly.
I gotcha.
So because maybe I'm that target audience, maybe I also maybe I'm the driver and the motivator.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I mean, again, it's one of those things where home improvement never really slowed down, but upon reopening, if you can actually see people again, you want to make sure if you're having people over that you've got a nice setup for everything. And if you don't have it, you got to build it. So,
Yeah. So I don't know if necessarily it's gonna be like a big like it's the big winner type thing, but it's at least something that I see will be trending like up.
consistent momentum at least.
Right. Yeah.
I gotcha. I mean, if this probably isn't going to surprise any of you, given the background of what I do for my day job, but I would be looking at hospitality and entertainment big time. I would be looking at MGM. I would be looking at Las Vegas Sands. I would be looking at, those types of brands that people have been hungry to go out and do stuff, and pretty soon that's going to be a possibility.
Makes
So,
sense,
Yeah.
man.
I think that fits into with the travel.
yeah.
Yeah. You can just the Expedia and the Airbnbs.
Yeah, and I mean you've got Penn National is poised to join the S&P. I don't think the growth that we've seen in online gaming is going anywhere either. So anybody that's got online gaming product, I still think is going to be a hot play. I'm just curious to see how high some of these things climb, because like to your guys' point, there is so much pent up airline demand to travel literally anywhere. There is so much demand to stay anywhere that's not your house. Like, Austin, do you have an idea of where that ceiling might be?
I really don't have an opinion or any idea, but I was listening to, I think I mentioned this before, but I was listening to an interview with the CEO of Airbnb shortly before they had their IPO. And one of the things he mentioned that a new trend that he predicts to be seeing as things open back up is instead of people going to cities or something like that, they're going to be going on vacation to national parks and outdoor,
Yep.
doing a lot more outdoor activity. So I think that's kind of where we'll see the most growth in terms of the travel and hospitality industry, and not so much in cities around a bunch of people, because maybe some people are still worried, but also, I mean, you want to get somewhere where you can breathe finally and
Yep.
see things far away and move around.
Yeah. Count me in. I would be one of those people.
Yeah.
So, the other big news of the week that I want to discuss with everybody pertains to electric vehicles. Now, by now, Kyle's struggles with Workhorse have been well documented.
Workhorse ended up being a positive for me, actually.
Okay, so you got out at the right time, but
Yes.
their struggles are ongoing for anybody who is still
It
in
was
that boat.
definitely not the winner that I was hoping it was going to be.
No.
Certainly.
I mean, sometimes you have to take the risk and see what happens, but
Yeah.
the big news that I saw this week, though, was that Lordstown, which is another one of those like SPAC type of IPO route electric vehicle manufacturers, basically allegedly falsified order records to the tune of like in excess of 35 or 40 million dollars, and those don't exist.
So, like, they said that they sold more than they.
So the truck is currently in testing. It is not for sale yet. But basically, Hindenburg Group is the one who did the research. And they are basically saying a bunch of these companies that have signed up to pre-order these trucks,
Don't exist.
they either don't exist or they employ like two people and their address is a USPS like postal box. Like not a legitimate type setup.
Okay, so they were doing this to drum up, like, fake, so I have fake interest, so you get investor confidence, I guess.
Exactly. And so that brings me to my question. In an era where everybody and their brother is filing for a SPAC so that they can go public and raise money for whatever the hell they want to do, how, I guess, in your eyes, as you assess whether or not you think that something is worth pursuing as an investment, how are you separating what is good from what is bad? Because at face value, Lordstown for a lot of electric vehicle people was like, this could be interesting. They're made in America, blah, blah, blah. And yet here we are again, where for the second time in almost as many months between Nikola and Lordstown, you've got, SPAC-oriented companies that have basically committed, potentially, massive amounts of fraud.
Well, I mean, the kind of, like, risk, I guess, like, we were talking last week about, like, the marijuana industry and the risk of investing in it because there's a high ceiling, but, there's all these unknowns about the industry. There's a lot of political unknowns, like, are you going to get legal approval? But talk about, like, I don't know any of the companies, like, that I would be investing in if I wanted to invest in, like, a marijuana company of any kind. So, like, I'd have to do, like, a lot of research into it and, like, stuff, and that's probably to an extent the same thing that you would have to do in EV or, like, these other similar types of companies where, like, most of the companies in my portfolio are huge names that I really have no worry about them falsifying their order. Like, they'll just report that they had bad earnings, I guess, because they already have billions of dollars at their disposal. Like,
Yeah.
the investors already have confidence in them. Like, they don't. I mean, I guess they could be falsifying stuff, but at a certain point, I think they're big enough to not be lying to me.
So essentially, you're screening out anything like that is the way that you assess the volatility of your portfolio.
Yeah.
You're only looking at things that are big enough to not have those kinds of issues.
Well, I wouldn't say only. I mean, like, I'm invested in Ripple, which is like some random
True.
cryptocurrency.
True.
But I mean, like, all cryptocurrencies to an extent are kind of like that. Like, even Bitcoin, is very it's up.
Highly speculative. Yes.
It's up 7% today. I mean, like, just looking across the cryptocurrency market, I see that Bitcoin is up 7%. I see a couple of the other coins that I just track are up like double-digit percents. I see a couple other that are down double-digit percents today. So
Yeah.
like, that's kind of just all like that. So I mean, my investment in Workhorse, I guess, had a similar level of risk, but I think I kind of approached it in a level where I was assuming that level of risk existed. So I guess my thing is, if you're going to invest in those companies, you kind of have to worry about I guess we have been proven that is a problem, but I would have been kind of worried about those kind of problems prior to those stories coming to light.
Yeah. So your default strategy is to at least do enough homework so that you're hopefully not surprised by anything.
Well, I mean, right,
With the exception of anything like large and extremely scandalous that you would not be able to readily find information on.
Yeah, I mean, like, like, it's just like a very basic background check, essentially, right? Like, if I have public knowledge before I was even introduced to you as an investor, I assume that you're probably pretty good. Like, you know, if I just know about you just because of what you do, like that's a pretty good, I feel like, you know, vote of confidence in your product. Like I know what Microsoft is prior to me investing in Microsoft business. I knew
Yep.
what, you know, Tesla was prior to doing that, I guess.
Yep.
But like, you know, Workhorse, I didn't. So Workhorse was kind of like, you know, this is a level of
Mm-hmm.
kind of like, you know, we'll see. But you know, I kind of feel like if you're making an investment where you know that that is your level of knowledge, like you should kind of, yeah, you should have. I mean, maybe millions of dollars of falsified orders is at the extreme, but you know, like if you find out there were bad, we'll just say bad financial information, accounting information that was kept, like I wouldn't be surprised by that, you know.
Yeah. Okay. I gotcha. So then let's take a look at this from the other side. Austin, as somebody who's constantly assessing companies' financials and looking at all angles of a deal, like walk us through some of that criteria and how it might be useful to somebody who's trying to figure out whether they want to get into some of this SPAC business or not.
I think first you want to take a look at the overall market size, maybe in terms of who's the number of players, the number of customers, the value of the market, and then slowly scale it down to the market that the company you're interested in is serving specifically. And then once you get down to that, you can kind of see who are their customers, who are they selling to, and then you can maybe even just take a look at their customers and just kind of review their their business, I guess, financial standing, or try to get as much information as you can about their financial standing. Have they worked with other people in the past? Do they have a good reputation? So it's just a due diligence process of I think, starting big, and then as you're doing your research, you kind of get the ideas as you're reading and looking into things. You get the idea of how to scale it down and get to the very specific market that the company you're interested in is operating.
Okay, so then what are a couple of red flags that to you would pop out as something here doesn't sound right?
Nothing specific in mind, but I mean, I think it just will stand out. Like when you're just, that's why I think starting with the overall market, because as you scale down, you'll catch things that don't really add up to what what was what came with just the general information that you started researching. You'll get, as you narrow it down, you say, hey, that doesn't make sense. I read something like this, and it doesn't quite add up. Nothing specific in mind, but I think you'll just know when you see it if you're doing the research.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how that one turns out. I am very, very curious. Because we talked initially when we first started filming these about, you know, the whole Wall Street bets thing and whether or not regulation would come into play because of the actions that were taken in that scenario. In my eyes, this is not that dissimilar. I mean, you have a new market offering, you have a new way to take companies public, and in relatively short order, you've had a couple of very serious problems that could potentially result in wide-scale, massive amounts of fraud. Again, all of it is alleged at this point. Nothing has been proven, but do we think that they're going to be as quick to look at some of these things as they were to bring in some of the Wall Street Bets people for a congressional hearing? Because, I mean, at face value, the answer would be you would certainly hope so. But what my gut tells me as a cynical person is that it's not going to happen because it's not as sexy of a news story.
Okay, yeah, but even as a cynical person, it's like, you know, like whether or not you believe that the Wall Street bets thing was like, like whether or not you believe like the hearings that they're having were like phony or just like, you know, like pointless or whatever. Part of the reason why they happened so quickly was because of the amount of public attention, right? Like everybody knew about GameStop for like a week.
Yep.
So like, you know, like everyone talked about GameStop for like a week. Like not everyone is talking about this. So even if you believe that like these infringements, we'll call them, like equal level, like one got way more attention. You could have think that the speed that they were resolved would also be slow, is what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah, I gotcha.
I don't think they rushed GameStop specifically because they were like, oh, the common people are hurting, our homie hedge fund managers. But, I mean, that certainly helped, expedite the process. But like, it also was the fact that like we got the entire country looking at us right now, expecting us to do something. Even if it's the wrong thing, let's do something.
Okay, so then let me pose this question to you then. Again, allegedly, right? How many more times is this going to happen before we get to a GameStop level of scrutiny, I guess, for lack of a better word?
I mean, it depends who gets burned, probably. I mean, isn't that how politics work? Like, when someone important gets burned, policy will be pushed. Or or if a lot of people are burned and they make a big stink about it, someone who's important, that policy is pushed. Which is what
Yeah.
happened with GameStop, right? That's what happened with GameStop. A lot of people were screwed. So they complained about it, and then they were like, we gotta do something. We'll have hearings and stuff, and we'll bring in random Reddit users and ask them about whether or not they like the stock. Okay? Like, okay, like sure. But with this, it's like I don't know who lost money on this investment, but obviously it wasn't anyone important enough for them to be like, that's gonna be the big ticket right now. So, I mean,
So I'll put it to you this way: their current 1 month return is negative 37.88%,
so it's tanking right now, well, because
and they lost 14.78 of that on Friday.
So what happens if it turns out it's not true?
Then it becomes an instant buy, and you just bought a seriously devalued asset and can become seriously rich.
Does that get regulated the other way? What if I just, I come up with false accusations about a company that I think is going to have some huge spike in the future, come up with allegations, I drag the name through the mud, it tanks, I buy it as it tanks, turns out it's not true, it's not linked to me somehow, I guess.
Well, yeah, and so that's where you have to draw the line between what is good intentioned research and what is deliberate market manipulation, and that is a conversation for another episode because that would be like 6 hours worth of content.
So, we'll see. I don't know. Probably a lot, several more times over again.
Okay,
Several.
interesting.
I don't know. I guess we'll see. Like, what happened the first time? Did they say like, is it possible to happen again? Like, what was the response the first time? I guess.
It was fairly contained.
Yeah. So they're kind of just.
Or I should say subdued, not contained. It was fairly
Yeah.
subdued.
I mean, so far it's like mostly like people probably won't do that, right? Like, they know that it can happen. They said it probably won't happen. But I do kind of understand. At a certain point, there does have to be a level of trust. Like, you can't watch every step, but.
No.
Should they be watching more, or maybe watching other things? Perhaps.
All fair questions. Alrighty. Looking ahead to next week and the week after that, as we wrap up the month of March, how is everyone feeling? Are there any impending moves that you would like to tease in this week's episode, or are we keeping cards close to the vest?
I think I'm pretty fine. Pretty good change.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good. I decided that I haven't made any changes since last month, and I decided that my investment philosophy has always been long. Like, it's about time in the market, not timing the market. So I decided that my strategy will just be to hold with making adjustments here and there, and see how that competes against everyone.
I think you and I have very similar philosophies in that way. A lot of times it's about identifying a quality asset and letting it have time to perform, as opposed to trying to nail every pick with 100% accuracy.
Yeah, I agree.
Kyle, anything on your radar? Are you happy where you're at?
I mean, I have been considering like making them like doing that move into maybe like home improvement.
Okay.
I was trying to see this week, see what would trend up or like balance out, like what was the
Yeah.
biggest mover or what was like a fast one. Um, but I don't know. Yeah, I mean the only one that I'm considering maybe cutting right now at this time is like Adobe.
Are you up on Adobe right now, or are you down?
No, I'm down, but it's all from this past like few weeks, like this month. So
So you'd be locking in a loss to do it, which isn't ideal, but
exactly.
I guess it depends whether or not the opportunity cost of not chasing or chasing home improvement is worth it.
Right. Yeah. Because like all my big like I guess successful investments have been like I'm pretty comfortable with them and I kind of
Yep.
like them and I don't really want to let go. So it's like, do I just take the loss and maybe see what getting rid of Adobe will give me, or do I just hold on to it and see what happens? Um, yeah, I'm looking pretty comfortable in getting rid of Adobe at the moment, so I guess we'll have to see.
Okay.
See what Monday or Tuesday brings.
Well, time will tell. You're only a percentage point out of last place, so that's going to be a close race.
I want to at least be above 0%.
Okay, so you don't care if you get last as long as you're up for the month. That's what matters.
Yeah, I don't want yeah, I think that's kind of the pace I'm taking. Like winning would be great. Coming in second again would be great. But yeah, feeling like I'm like if everyone's above 0, I at least feel like we're all winning. But I don't want to be like
Yeah.
I don't want to be the only one losing.
The only one, yeah.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Alrighty, well, that's going to wrap it up for us tonight. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Good luck in week 3, guys, and I will talk to you again real soon.